what happened yesterday? Just tell people what was your encounter like for the first time on Nigerian soil with this major security behemoth known as the SSS.
What we experienced yesterday, denying him access to his counsel pursuant to a court order, which was complied with on our side with great scrupulousness.
We're not allowed to come in with writing mattress. We're not allowed to come in without our shoes. Our belts are being asked to remove. We just fold your belt as if you're a criminal. Somebody's there undergoing investigation. You know what it means when you are sent to Nigerian investigative authority, police, DS, or whatever I call it. First thing they will do to them is ask you to remove your slippers, remove your belt, remove your watch, remove your cap and everything. This is my cap, I'll remove it. They say, okay, go follow here, follow, march, go. As if you're a criminal. That's how we have been treated. I've not seen such in the case of my practice as a lawyer. But that notwithstanding, we said, no problem. And I want my friend, my partner from US, a non-lawyer, to also witness same yesterday.
Once filed some cases at the International Criminal Court against some Nigerian officials. Can you give us an update about that?
Well, it's difficult because the International Criminal Court that sits in The Hague, it's not like they're open is what they're doing. But we charged General Bertai and President Buhari with genocide, crimes against humanity. They take the filing, they stamp it, and they even the actual clerks at the ICC are sufficiently fearful of retaliation. They don't even give you their names. They have no. You walk in and they have numbers on them. That's all. So we just know that our filing was not the sole one charging the leadership of the government with genocide. It's an ongoing investigation.
Taking up the role of ensuring that Nigeria doesn't get sold more weapons from the U.S. They already had delivery of about 6 Tucano jets, and I think there are 6 other ones on the way. So do you think you're going to make any progress, any success in that, or it's just going to be
lawsuit is outstanding. We haven't had an answer from, let's say we sued the Secretary of State there, Tony Blinken, who's responsible for certifying that the weapons will not be in the hands of security forces guilty of egregious human rights violations. That's the U.S. law. It's called the Leahy Law because there's a famous senator, Pat Leahy from Vermont, who's the sponsor of these prohibitions. We haven't received an answer yet. They still have time under our federal rules, but we're also working in Congress. At any time, irrespective of what the executive branch decides. And remember, this was a decision made by President Trump, not President Biden. He's President Biden, unfortunately, because he's got other things he's preoccupied with, I think has permitted this sale to move forward, even though at a slower pace than otherwise. But Congress can ban, the sale at any time and demand the return at any time by statute. There, I think we have already made approaches and overtures. Chris Smith of New Jersey is very, very concerned about the human rights situation in Nigeria.
Nnamdi Kanu kidnapped practically from Kenya. Surprisingly, the international media is quiet about this. What do you think is responsible for that? This is a kind of atrocity committed, by state or non-state actors that would normally attract breaking news headlines all over the world, but not much is heard out, about that outside of the Nigerian media locally. What are you doing about making sure that this particular part of the story is told to the world? That a citizen of the UK, not a Nigerian at this point, is dual citizen, but he was carrying a UK passport, gets kidnapped from his base in Kenya, probably drugged and flown, with an unmarked plane outside of Kenya to Nigeria. We just found out one day that he's here. We don't know the second. Nobody can tell the full story. Do you have something to tell those who are watching what really happened?
There are a couple of explanations, if you will, not justifications. One, you have to remember that in this globalized community, the Nnamdi Kanu story is competing against literally volumes of other stories that are capturing attention. But that's not the sole explanation. I think also that it is very important because the news media is like other organizations. You got to push and shove to get something before them. You have to have an outreach media effort. Otherwise, unless the story is a nuclear bomb or something, it doesn't get into their radar screen.
Supposing the Nigerian government invites you to a meeting to say, hey, let's talk about why you're here, would you be willing to meet with them?
This is not about vengeance. No, justice really is international, and everybody recognizes the right to self-determination, to due process. It's universally condemned. Torture is extrajudicial killings. And, sit down and say, listen, I have an expertise in constitutional law. And it seems very odd to me from the United States that Nigeria lives under a constitution ordained by a military dictator in 1999 with no input from the public. No referendum, nothing. And you're still living under this, 22 years later? To me, it seems utterly absurd. How does that document have legitimacy? How do you give legitimacy to a legal instrument so that it'll be complied with, rather than just manipulate it, to benefit those who have the power? But I'm always someone who believes in Winston Churchill, better to jaw than war. Sit down. We have a very professional conversation. What are the issues? How are we going to address them? They have ideas. I'm not claiming I'm omniscient. People can learn from one another, but that's the way. That really is the heart and soul of civilized governance. It's communicate, discourse, listen. Nobody should believe that they might not be wrong. I could be wrong. They could be wrong. That's why we need to talk it out.
You are in Nigeria. This is the land of a dictator. Supposing they grab you and put you on a plane to go back to the U.S., what do you say to that?
Well, I would be disappointed. But I am very humble. I live in the United States, which has enormous flaws. But I get up. I live really, literally within one block of the Congress and the U.S. Supreme Court. I walk to work, and I'm awed by our forefathers who were able to craft a system that protected liberty. And I understand that you here in Nigeria, in the Biafrans, you're taking far more risks than me. It's just an accident. It's a fluke. I happen to be born in the United States. I'm glad that it was, but I certainly didn't have any responsibility for that. It just happened. So, you can't make progress, unless you take some risks. It's not, you don't do foolish risks, but there's an old saying that, a tortoise makes its progress only by sticking out its head. Otherwise, it stays in its shell. And so that's the attitude that I have. I certainly would not welcome it, but if it happens, it happens. Others have suffered far more grievously than that.
One of the things you talked about in this conversation is the fact that most U.S. citizens live in this kind of bubble regarding what's happening outside. They will have, if you're looking at them today, you can have them just listen to what you have to say. How can you break this down to them that, this is one part of the world, Nigeria, where egregious atrocities are being committed, against a set of people, not few, lots of people, and this didn't start today. Between 1967 and 1970, year before I was born, over 6 million people had to be killed for the same reason, just to keep Nigeria united, as they claimed at that time. And today we are back on the verge of another civil war. What can you help tell them before they start contributing money on CNN for refugees and all that, to just get the message across to them?
It's a challenging issue of human nature. If you're too sanctimonious and try to preach to them and say, listen, you should be involved, you're lucky, people resist that. So you have to be very tactful and say, we really do have a responsibility when we know evil is ongoing, at least to denounce it, to not be complicit in it, because at some point silence becomes complicity. And that this is a way, and everybody has a different way in which they can try to advance the cause of justice. Some can be contributions, some can just be standing protests, telling your children about what's happening there. We shouldn't be supporting that. And obviously, even in the United States itself, writing a member of Congress and saying we shouldn't be selling weapons, the Super Tucano. those small ways to indicate in their own protocols. You can't come in and preach and tell them, okay, I'm Jesus, I'm Moses, I'm Muhammad, and you need to do X, Y, Z. That's going to work. You have to be more indirect, suggesting, we're very fortunate in the United States, and we don't have to worry about a knock on the door or a house being burned down the next day. But that's all the more reason that we ought to be concerned with the plight of others who do confront those kinds of dangers. And this is, you'll feel better for yourself that you helped the world become a little better place. We have our architect of the Constitution, James Madison, he said that the end of civil society is justice. That's why we have civil society, is justice.